Sita ji,
Yes.
I just spoke with Usha ji. I was able to get hold of her.
Okay.
He's connecting with Shukavak ji, so hopefully
Great.
he will log in shortly.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I was just texting as well.
Okay.
Excellent posters.
Thank you.
By the phone,
Okay.
wondering why nobody sent him anything. I think he missed the email that sent him the
Okay.
link.
Gaurav, hello.
Ji.
So Shukavak ji, I think
Yes.
he has a link problem, and he's waiting online.
If you can email it to him, he'll get on right away. He's
So
waiting.
if you can email the link to him, that's what we got to do. Gaurav,
I did email him, so
he just emailed. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I
I'll
did email.
phone and make sure he's able to get it.
Okay. Please check with him.
Yeah. Because
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a mix-up on the link. He's waiting. So. Yeah, I think he's logged in now. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, Gauravji, I think we're all set.
Shukavak Ji, Namaskar, and welcome to today's session. My name is Gaurav Rastogi, and I'll introduce the class, and I'll then request you to please come online. Are you able to hear me? Shukavak Ji, are you able to hear us?
Yes, we
Shukavak Ji,
can.
Namaskar. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, we can.
No, Shukavak Ji, I was asking
Shukavak
Shukavak
Ji, our
if he's,
speaker.
He's still muted and he's not on video yet.
he had a video on for a second, but yeah.
I was just checking. Maybe I can ask to unmute.
Shukavak Ji, okay, there you go. Shukavak Ji, Namaskar.
Okay.
Are you able to hear us?
I can? Yes.
Okay.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. All right, why don't we get going, and then just give us a couple of minutes to introduce you and to set up the class. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Das.
Okay, so are you able to see me?
Yes, we're able
We
to
are
see you.
able to see you,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm actually sitting in my car under a tree, like Shantiniketan style. Okay.
All right.
Sure thing. All right. So we'll begin with the opening prayers, and then I'll introduce Dr. Das. So please, let's get together and begin with the opening prayers, which is Sahana Bhavatu. I'm going to ask you to please sit comfortably, sit in any comfortable posture, sitting with your back straight. Sit comfortably with your back straight, the back, neck, and head in a straight line.
Thank you.
Close your eyes gently and relax the expression on your face. Bring your attention to the breath. Bring it gently. Bring a gentle half moon smile to your face and let the smile travel in to your heart. We're going to chant Om 3 times and then the opening prayers, Sahana Bhavatu. Bring your palms together in Namaskar Mudra at the heart center. Bring your attention to the hollow space between the palms. Stay right here as you breathe in and out. We're going to chant Om 3 times. Exhale completely. Take a deep breath. Inhale. Om. Inhale. Inhale. Inhale and chant. Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavitvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaskar. Did we go through the entire prayer without my thing? I may have been on mute.
Yes, we
So we're
did.
going to begin. It is a distinct and very high pleasure and an honor for us to welcome Dr. Shukavak Das. Today we have a wonderful series of lectures. We begin with Dr. Shukavak Das, who's going to talk to us about how to bring out the richness of a Hindu wedding. Later at 2:15. Sorry, my internet connection is not stable. I apologize for that. We're going to then have Professor Subhash talking about the Vedic view of consciousness. And then at 4 o'clock Pacific, we'll have Pandit Neil Prasad talking to us about the science and spirituality of Kirtan, and we'll be chanting with him. Our first talk is by Dr. Shukavak Das. He is the head priest of the Hindu Society of Inland Empire's Hindu Temple, which is a temple in Riverside, California. He's also professor of Hindu studies at Claremont School of Graduate Studies and at the Claremont School of Theology. He is director of the Sanskrit Religions Institute, which is an organization that promotes Hindu studies in the West, including Hindu Encounters with Modernity. He's written several books, including Hindu Encounter with Modernity, Ganga Flows West, and a translation and study of the Bhagavad Gita. Dr. Das holds a PhD from the University of Toronto in South Asian Studies and an MA in Sanskrit Grammar from university colleges. There's a really interesting set of articles, one that I enjoyed reading about Dr. Das officiating Hindu weddings. And we requested him to talk to us about how to bring out the richness of the Hindu tradition in conducting a wedding. So with that, I'm going to request Dr. Das to please begin the talk. Dr. Das? Welcome, and I request you please unmute and please also open up your camera. Dr. Das?
Okay. All right, so I've just unmuted myself. Are you all, is everyone able to hear me?
We can hear you, yes. We can hear you.
We have here?
Confirm that. We can't see you, but we can hear you. Yes, we can see you as well.
Oh, okay, you can see me?
We have about 27 people. Yes, we can see you. We have 27 people here and a handful watching online on YouTube as well.
Okay. All right then. How much
We
time
can see
do you
you
want
and
me
hear
to?
you, Shukavak-ji.
How much time do you want me to take? Hello?
Gaurav-ji?
Okay, now I'm.
Hello.
Dr. Das, you have time until 2:10, if that's okay with you, or 2:15?
About an hour.
Oh, okay. I'll take till 2 o'clock because I'm sitting in a golf course in Riverside under a tree, and I have a wedding that's starting at 2:30. And so I came here and got all set up so I could look after your side, and then I'll just jump in and do my wedding.
Okay.
So kind of, we're doing this at the same time. I'm about to talk about the same thing we're doing. So kind of a good thing. Okay, so if everyone can hear me, I'll just kind of start speaking, and a couple of things I want to address that I hope will be interesting to everyone, and then maybe we can have a few questions, something along that lines. So my name, of course, is Shukavak, and I'm the head priest of a Hindu temple in Riverside. I have been at this temple for about 29 years now. And before that, I was in Orange County, also in Southern California, looking after a temple there, Radha Raman Temple. And I was there for, well, I've been doing this for like 35 years. Let's put it that way. And I think over the years, a rough calculation, I'm getting very close to about 5,000 weddings. And that's a lot of life. And it's actually a great honor to be a part of so many people's lives. And because of that, I think in many ways, I have seen the wedding sort of business, so to speak, or the wedding, I don't really call it a business, but I guess it is. But I've seen it develop all over America in the last 35 years, and how it started off in a very simple way, and where we are today in doing that. And the main thing for me is I have two categories of weddings that I do. So in the local area where I am here, like in Southern California, and that covers Santa Barbara to San Diego in the Los Angeles area. So this is what I call a local wedding. And for me, a local wedding is very commonly, you know, Patel marries Patel, or Patel marries Gupta, or Gupta marries Yelamanchili, or something like that. In other words, Hindu marries Hindu. And so that's one category of weddings that we do. And then the other category of weddings, this is the mixed wedding. And this is what I would sort of define as Patel marries Smith. And so what I mean by that is I'm just saying Hindu marries non-Hindu. And for me, those weddings tend to be out of town or out of station weddings. So this is where somebody will call me to come all the way to New York or Atlanta or Miami or anywhere in the world for that matter. And then so we're traveling quite a bit for those kinds of weddings. And they're very different kinds of weddings. When you're doing sort of the Hindu marries Hindu, as opposed to the Hindu marries non-Hindu, it's a different kind of style of wedding, and you obviously have a different kind of audience. And of course, I have also done weddings in India, and of course, most of you, I assume, are from India, and you grew up that way, and so you've seen the weddings at India that can very easily take 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 2.5 hours. They're much longer, more elaborate kinds of weddings. The weddings that we do here, they tend to be shorter, and so it's very typical that the bride and groom or the parents will come to me and say, we got to get this done in as short a time as possible. And so my answer is, if you leave me alone kind of thing, I'll take about an hour. I can get everything done in an hour. And then if you have other requirements, it may be more, maybe less. And a lot of times people will come and say, oh, we've got to get this thing done in 40 minutes or 45 minutes. Or the extreme case is, we got to get it done in 30 minutes. And I've gone all the way to Hong Kong just to do a 30-minute Hindu wedding. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to cut stuff out. How do we do this kind of thing? So in general, those are the kinds of weddings that we do. And in the West here, the vast majority of weddings are taking about 50 to 60 minutes in that time frame. But I've noticed over the years, the time frame is dropping. And it's very common for the brides particularly come up. So we got to get this done in 45 minutes. We got to get it done in 40 minutes. So we've been shrinking down in terms of the time. So that's one development. Now, for me, because I'm Western and I have one foot in both worlds, so to speak, people will come to me and they'll seek me out. And the typical scenario is, nice Hindu boy or girl has gone off to college, and they've fallen in love or met somebody and then fallen in love with some non-Hindu. And it could be Jewish, Christian, atheist, whatever. And so this is then the parents have a sort of a dilemma of what to do. How do we put these two? And then so one of the solution is call the Gora Pundit. So, you know, call the American priest, I guess you could say. And so I probably do more of those kinds of mixed weddings than your average Indian priest is concerned. So I see probably more than my share of the mixed weddings, simply because of there's not that many of me, and therefore when mixed wedding situation comes up, they'll call me because they're kind of desperate to find a priest that can work in both worlds like that. So I do more of that kind of thing. And quite honestly, when I do these mixed weddings, I enjoy them on a certain, I enjoy them very much. And at the same time, I also think it's a kind of a failure. So what I mean by that is a lot of times when we have non-Hindu people coming, and this is probably, the wedding is probably the first time they have any direct experience with Indian Hindu culture. It's a really fantastic opportunity to present the wedding, the Hindu wedding, to people that have never seen it before. And in a sense, it becomes a form of, I guess the word would be like prachar. It's kind of an opportunity for me to kind of preach, not to convert people or anything like that, but to present what I consider to be a very beautiful, very symbolic and very meaningful ceremony to people that have never seen it before. And that's a personal honor to be able to take a piece of India that I consider to be particularly beautiful and then present it to people that have never seen it before. And inevitably, they all go away saying, oh, wow, that was a beautiful, I understood that. I've never seen anything like that. And a lot of times your Indian community that's in there, they're kind of like watching their watch and thinking, okay, when's this thing going to get over? When can we eat? And the wedding brochure, they'll use it as a fan. But your Western people are like, we can't get enough of this. And so we want to, they're like all ears, and they're watching the brochure and reading it over and following it through and listening. And a lot of times the Indian side is they're thinking, oh, we want to keep this real simple for the Western people. And when in fact is the Western people want more. They could watch an hour and a half wedding and it wouldn't bother them. It wouldn't faze them at all. They would love it. And the Indian community is kind of feeling they're feeling guilty. We have to sort of dumb it down for them. And I always tell them, no, you can go the opposite direction. They love it. So one of the most important things we do is presenting not just the wedding, but in effect, it becomes the whole Hindu culture that gets presented to people for the very first time when these mixed weddings take place. And a lot of times I've done weddings where I've had the governor of California in attendance, or many high level people in American culture or even European culture when we do these mixed weddings. And so this is the people's first experience of Hinduism. And of course, we want them to go away with a very favorable experience. And a lot of times the Western people that come in with all the stereotypes of, Hare Krishna movement or Rajneesh or, some cult or something like that. And so they sort of come in with that kind of media sort of stereotypes that's been presented. And now they're seeing kind of real Hinduism in its ritual form for the first time. And they walk away impressed. And it changes their attitude towards India and in general. So that's one of the great values of doing a mixed wedding, is that you get all these people that have never seen it before and they're really paying attention and they just love the pageantry and the color and the sound of the mantras. And another thing for me is when I do it, I'm not really a mantra technician in that sense. I just don't sit there and just spiel out mantras. When I do a wedding, I explain it. I engage the audience. I try to make them laugh and pay attention. And so I try to engage them. And so when they go away, it's not just some guy just rattling off mantras and like that, but they have been part of the marrying process or the wedding process. So that's one thing that I consider probably one of the most valuable things that I do, is that I'm an ambassador for Hindu culture to Western people. And I get to do it in the most elaborate way with a wedding in the most sort of high-ended ceremony. Now, the other side to that is that, in a sense, when a nice Hindu boy or girl goes off to college and then ends up marrying a non-Hindu, that's a bad thing. And not that it's bad, but it's, in some ways, it means that we're looking at a sort of a dumbing down or a watering down of the culture. And there's an important expression that is there in the West, and you may be aware of this, that, you know, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And so particularly if a Hindu boy is marrying a non-Hindu girl, those children that come up probably are going to be more influenced by the mother, which is the non-Hindu side in a lot of cases. And so there's a watering down of the culture. And even, you know, like our Jewish community, they want to maintain their sort of cultural and spiritual purity, and they'd like to have their Jewish son or daughter marry a nice Jewish boy or girl. And the same thing with our Indian parents is they ideally like to see their children marry another Hindu boy or girl. But when it doesn't happen, then it in some ways the weddings turn out to be very good. And I don't think the failure rate is particularly different than Indian marries Indian. They seem to stay together. But the children don't, they're not really, if they're marrying Christian mother, they're not really Christian. At the same time, they're not really Hindu. So there's a kind of a loss of the cultural tradition on both sides. When we're doing a Hindu marries a non-Hindu wedding, and particularly when the bride is non-Hindu, she's the one that's going to rule, and the family is going to kind of move in the more non-Hindu direction in a lot of cases. In some cases, it's quite the opposite. And I have seen Western people just get right into it and put on dhotis and saris for the wedding and get right into it, and then want to follow through with Holi and Navratris and, you know, and Janmashtami, and they really do it. So it's not a black and white thing that it's just either and or, but a lot of times a mixed wedding is a good chance for prachar and reaching out, but at the same time, it does represent the sort of the dumbing down or the diluting of the spirituality and the culture of both sides. Okay, so that's one role that I play in marriages that is probably more than your average sort of Indian priest. People will be seeking me out. Now, another thing is, the other side is, of course, we do lots and lots of Hindu marries Hindu weddings. And this is actually, for me, more fun in the sense of I probably end up with an Indian DJ. I probably end up with Indian decorators, and then everybody's on the same page. And there's nothing more exciting than doing the wedding when you got an Indian DJ and they know all the right music, and everybody sort of knows we're going to do the shoe negotiations and all this sort of the fun side of things. And the colors is, you know, the mixed weddings tend to be white weddings in the sense of you know, the decorations are all kind of white, which is a funerary color actually. But when we do the Hindu wedding, then we get to have the real fun of doing a full-fledged wedding with everybody dressed properly and all the music right and the food right and the whole rest of it. So in some ways, I enjoy those ones very much. Now, the reason I do more of a lot of those kinds of weddings, and you might think, oh, he's some white guy. How does he do these sort of Hindu kind of weddings? And a lot of it comes from the bride and the groom, and not necessarily the parents. In other words, in most cases, the children, the bride and the groom, have grown up in this country. They're Western in the sense of they were schooled in the West, and of course they have Indian backgrounds and maybe South Indian, North Indian, whatever. but they have that Hindu background, but at the same time, their primary language is English. Their primary education is Western, and they sort of have the norms of how a wedding should go in their mind based on what they've seen with their American friends. And so they seek out an English-speaking priest, and that's me. And not just somebody, there's lots of priests that can speak in English, of course, but I mean an English communicating priest. And so it's the children who are Western born here in the West, but they're Indian background. They will come to me and they'll tell their parents, I want that American priest to come and do our wedding because I have my American friends or my Western friends coming, and he talks to us and communicates to us, and he can communicate to our Western friends, and so we want him. So my position with the Indian marries or Hindu marries Hindu weddings, it's coming primarily from the bride and the groom. And it's a great success in the sense that I go in and I do my thing and I communicate to those children and to their friends who may or may not be Hindu. And again, they walk out with, gosh, I know why I got married and I know what happened and I understood the whole thing. And so we like it. At the same time, it's a kind of a failure, again, because one of the problems of Hinduism in America or Hinduism in the West, period, whether it's Canada or parts of Europe and so forth, where we have a growing Hindu community, is that we do not have priests that speak English or are trained as what the expectation of a religious person should be, a clergy should be in the West. So I have had the experience of hiring probably about a dozen priests over the years. And I always have to get them from India. In most cases, I've got to go through the whole visa process. And many times when they come, they say on their application and we interview them, yes, we can speak English, and because we're looking for, somebody that can speak English as well as Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, whatever, like that. But English is always a requirement for temples. But when they come here, they actually, even though they may be able to speak English, it's broken English or it's pidgin English. It's not high quality English. But most importantly, they have no concept of what the children are looking for, the Indian raised children. And there's just a division of, they're coming from India, and a lot of the Brahmins, and that's another thing. I can only hire a Brahmin. So he has to be a traditional family-based Brahmin, and that's in a priestly family and practicing the priesthood. And these people in general do not have a Western education, even in India. So if you're growing up and you're doing some IT thing in India and you're like that, you've still got a formal education. But a lot of the priests that we get, they don't have formal education. They might have the equivalent of high school, and then their priestcraft comes as a result of, they sat with their mamaji who was a priest, and they followed him around from village to village doing weddings, and they just picked it up by osmosis. But they have no sense of priestcraft in a formal learned way that really is required in this country. And so they end up coming and doing the weddings, and they don't communicate. They just sort of, blare out the mantras and go through the procedures. And a lot of times the bride and grooms come back to me and say, they won't let us do the wedding that we want to do. They insist on doing a 2-hour wedding, and I can't get them to do it this way, and I don't want to do this, and we don't do this in our family, and they insist we have to do it this way or that way. And so the Indian priests tend to be very rigid, and it's only one way, we just do it this way. And they try to force the families, and particularly these Western educated bride and groom to fit into a certain mold. And a lot of times they come to me, the children come to me and say, oh, thank God, you can do it our way, and we want to do this, and can you adapt and make it work this way and that way and so forth, and can I use my sister instead of my brother, and in different parts of the ceremony. And so I'm very open to that kind of thing, and I flex with that, and they appreciate that. So that's one of the problems of the Indian priesthood in America is that they're not able to communicate with this next generation. Now, no problem dealing with the parents. And a lot of times it's the parents that, oh, we don't want a white priest. We don't want an English speaking priest. We want a Telugu speaking priest. We want a Gujarati speaking priest. We want our own priest. And that's fine. But that kind of thing is mostly coming from the parents. And the parents are very comfortable with these priests that come from India. They speak the same language. They grew up together. They're all on the same page. But when it comes to their children, there's a generation gap there, and there's a problem. But a lot of times the kids will just they just go along with it, and then so they get married that way. So that's kind of the situation that I deal with, and this kind of opens up the next thing I just want to mention as a topic, is that really in America here, or in the West in general, if there's a shutdown of visas for a terrorist incident or whatever, and we can't get, or we have a president or whatever, an administration that doesn't want to bring immigrants in, and we have an that kind of stuff, it closes down the visas and the process for getting priests from India. And so we're very dependent on getting our raw materials, so to speak, our priests from India, but this could close down, and it's very expensive with the immigration and everything. And wouldn't it be nice if we could train priests in this country? And this is something that I've tried to work on, but we just haven't been able to get it happening. That is that a lot of the Indian children that grew up in this country, they've dealt with their Christian and Jewish and friends, and they see how rabbis deal with their Jewish friends, or how ministers deal with their Christian friends, and a Western clergy, whether it's Jewish or Christian or whatever, is in general, they tend to be educated people. They've gone through schools of theology. They've taken classes in everything from psychology to statistics to accounting to philosophy, comparative religion, linguistics. This is the kind of training that a Western clergy would get if they went to a real seminary, a school like that, and they would be produced. They would come out so they could run a church. So running a church means dealing with the grieving side of a family, the counseling, personal problems of people, and even the accounting and fundraising that goes into running a church or a temple. And so this is the kind of training that a Western clergy gets. And I really, really think it's necessary for our Hindu clergy, our purohits and pundits to come out. They really need that kind of education as well. And I'll just give one example. We have a young man that's in our temple now that I was part of his immigration process and bringing him here, and he's a priest in our temple. And he's actually wonderful. He's great, except he doesn't speak English to the children. I mean, he speaks English, but he doesn't really communicate with that level of children that grew up here. And he just finished a wonderful 7-day saptaha katha in our temple, and he did it in a very traditional way, and he had the music and the tabla and the drums, and it was all in Hindi. But there was no children there. There was no young adults there listening to this thing. It was just that first generation that come here, and they love it, and he does a great job. and he ministers to their needs. But when it comes down to a ceremony like a wedding, where he's got to deal with the kids, the children of this first generation, even though he can speak English, he can't communicate with them. He has no background in theology, he has no background in comparative religion. He knows nothing about Christianity. He knows nothing. He knows nothing about accounting and psychology because he hasn't had that kind of training. And therefore he's limited and in what has to, what he can actually do in comparison to the way a Western clergy would act in their congregation. And so the solution to that is ultimately at some point, our Hindu priests have to have backgrounds in comparative religion, have to have backgrounds in grief counseling and psychology. They have to have backgrounds in all of these sort of other things other than mantras and rituals. And so the Indian priests that I see are basically, I call them mantra technicians. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They're very good at what they do. And I can't compete with them, and I don't even want to try. But they need to have this training that broadens out and can deal with other religions and so forth, and dealing with this next group of Western educated Hindu children. And this is one of the greatest needs. And all we need is shut down those visas, and I won't be able to get my any kind of priest out of India. And then where are we going to get them from? And so we got to make them here. So I'd love to be able to get a nice Brahmin Indian priest out of India that has a little bit of background and bring them into school, just hook them up with some university and have them take a course in comparative religion or psychology, kind of build out his personality. But they can't do it because they can't write in English. They can't read in English. They can speak in English, but they can't just step into a university or a college setting to even fill out their education and take their sort of what they've learned from their family and tradition and then broaden it out with some Western education. They don't have that background to even be able to work in a college. It's a problem. And as our temples grow and our Hindu community grow, we need to have more of these Western educated and traditionally educated priests to give this culture. So this young man that I'm thinking of right now, fabulous. He can sing songs and teach music, and he can do that, but he can't deal with the personal needs of this next generation. So that's a big problem that we have. And I have another Gujarati priest. Can't speak English. If I need to deal with him, I talk to his wife. She translates for him. I got a South Indian man, can't speak English, and I have to talk to his wife, before I can, get through to him. And they do great with the first generation, but they can't relate to this next generation. And ultimately, the future of our Hindu tradition in the West, it's an English-based tradition. It has this Western side to it, and we need to have priests at this level. Okay, so that's sort of my take on the sort of priestcraft and the wedding situation and so forth. So the time, what do we got for timing here? Yeah, so I have about 10 minutes. Do we have any questions, or do you want me to sort of go in another direction or anything?
So
I see somebody's hand up. It says Sita, but I don't
Sita,
know.
Why don't you
Go
your question first? Sita, please go ahead.
After you,
go
Gauraji.
Anybody there? I don't hear anything.
I had a question. I was just wondering, did you do any ceremony out of your vast experience? Did you kind
the
of
volume is way down. I have my volume up, but I honestly can't hear you. So
Okay.
just speak a little closer to the mic.
Yes. I was wondering, in your vast experience of so many marriages that you have done, have you kind of done any little bit of with maybe a chaplain or or maybe a rabbi also, to include a small bit of their ceremony along with the Hindu ceremony, like
Okay.
together?
I think the question was, have I done weddings with other ministers of other religious traditions? And the answer is absolutely. So I have done joint weddings with rabbis. I've done joint weddings with all varieties of Christian ministers. I've done it with Buddhist ministers. I've done it even very limited. I've done things with mullahs. So I have quite a bit of experience doing these sort of mixed marriages, and I've experimented with this in different ways. So one way is a typical kind of scenario that comes to me is, okay, so the bride is Christian or the groom is Christian and the other side is Hindu. And so they say, we want to spend an hour doing the wedding. That's it. And I say, well, one way to do it is I'll spend 40 minutes or so doing the Hindu component. And then I'll come up to the point of maybe at the end of the Saptapadi or the Mangal Sutra or whatever the order happens to be for that one. And then I'll say, now we're going to bring, Reverend or whatever, so-and-so up, and he's going to do part B, whatever that would be. And then I would go and take his seat and sit on the front. And then that person, or could be a lady, that person would come up and take them through 15 or 20 minutes of Jewish or Christian or whatever wedding. And then what I like to do is at the end, I do not pronounce them as married on part A, and the other person doesn't pronounce them as married on part B. When that person finishes their second part, he calls me back up, and then we come together and say, we pronounce you as husband and wife or married or whatever, like that. And so that way it kind of brings together A and B. And that's a really good way to kind of do a fusion wedding. The Western weddings tend to be 15 or 20 minutes. The Hindu weddings, as you know, can be 45 minutes easily. And they want to spend an hour. So we do 3/4 and 1/4, and it works together. And then we bring both clergy back. We pronounce you. That's one way we do it. Another way that, and I don't like this at all, but I will do it, and I have done it, is I have both officiants up there at the same time. And so the rabbi will do this, that for a bit, and then I'll do something for a bit, and we sort of go back and forth. And so I'll do the Ganesha Puja, then he does this, and then I'll do the Jaymala, and then he does this, and then we'll do this, and we kind of go back and forth and do it together. That's not a good way to do a wedding because it compromises both traditions. One is somewhat of a sit-down tradition, one is a stand-up tradition, and then you got the fire and things like that. So, but I've done that. It's not the best way to do it. It's better to break them into A and B, but that's how we do it, and it works out quite well. We've done that many times. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I have a kind of a information item for you, Dr. Das. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm part of the Hindu Community Institute, and what we have going here is that we. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I my problem was I didn't have my microphone on the. It was anyway. I hear you now better. I'm sorry.
Okay,
it was my
but
fault.
I'm going to repeat it. So I think I have to just bring something to your attention and get your comment on it. So we have this Hindu Community Institute where you are now presenting to our class. It's now in 8 countries. And so this video is going to be played into countries like Australia, India also. But we have a program, we train people as kind of a para chaplains. These are spiritual care providers, our graduates. We give them a graduate certificate after 10 months of training. We do not have the marriage and all those things included in there, but we see that we also have created a first time opening for Hindu chaplains. Our graduates are now can be admitted to GTU and where they can become chaplains. And now we have a wide open opportunity. So I have a feeling
Oh, this is excellent. I'm glad to hear this.
It's a spectacular new development, and we are the ones who can take a lot of pride in getting that done. So it has happened. We have the first 3 people in the chaplaincy course. Our Ushaji is, by the way, one of those pioneers. She is into that course after finishing here. I think the solution for Hindus is what we see is our chaplains and our CHTs are going to become the substitute priest for the occasion. They're not going to be priest, but for marriages, they will be the ones, just like you are, sought after, because they will have the perspective, they'll have the language, they'll have the cultural orientation.
Yes.
Talk to the youth, young people. So training Indian priests, I don't think is a workable model. However, chaplaincy is here and knocking on our doors. And now
I agree.
We need to create a large population of these chaplains, and everybody will be very happy with it. So I just want to bring that to your attention. And by the way, we may get you to help us, make some of our CHTs who want to perform weddings. Maybe we can do a specialized course for them. Kind of
now here's another point, that over the years, as the needs for the wedding have changed, and people are generally asking for less time. So we get the 45-minute or the 50-minute wedding. That means there's less mantras involved.
That's right.
And like when you're doing a 3-hour wedding in India, it's just mantras after mantras after mantras, and it goes on and on. And that's a very specific, highly trained job to be able to recite all those mantras. And there's no way you're going to get a lay person that can do that. But as the wedding becomes more of a person, people marrying and not mantras being recited, then this is where a chaplaincy or a less, what would be the word? Less, I would not say less qualified, but qualified in another way, away from the sort of ritual and mantra tradition, and more into the human talking communication tradition. And this is where chaplaincy can come and work. And because you can't train people without mantras, without a good chunk of Sanskrit, and that's a whole nother thing.
That's right.
But they can be trained to do weddings and other related things.
Last rites, same with last rites also.
Yeah,
and I think
I'll also just add a little note here.
Sure.
Because of the pandemic, I have done Satyaran Kathas in Zoom. I have done weddings in Zoom. I have done funerals in Zoom. I have done Namkaran in Zoom, Griha Pravesh in Zoom. And the way that I do it is I have the people sit down themselves and do the puja. I show them how to set it up, and it's all done on Zoom. And then I will say the mantras that are needed, and they do everything. And they love it. I've got people saying, we don't want to do it that way. We want to do it like we did before on Zoom. We don't need you to come because we want to do it. And I will have one family in New York, one family in Chicago, one family in San Francisco or Sydney or wherever. And they're following along, doing the puja themselves. And I'm just coaching them, taking it through. And it works. It's amazing.
Excellent. Well, I think I have attended one of the weddings here where you performed it, and your humor and the way you present the entire the ancient tradition in a very modern, contemporary way, engage the community and the participant. That's really very impressive. So where do you bring in humor in the wedding process?
I mean, why do I do it?
Now, what parts of how do you interject humor in the process of performing a Hindu wedding?
I don't know. It's just a natural thing for me. I don't plan. I got this joke or that joke or like that. I just get into it, get into the flow of it. And if the audience is comfortable and they're not baking in the heat, and they can, then we can interact with them. And it that's just my nature. That's just the way I do things. I teach, I entertain, and that's how I teach.
Yeah.
Panditji, namaste. And you performed my daughter's wedding in August in Fremont. Thank you so much. Indeed, the audience loved it because of the interaction. And I want to share with the HCI community that I think there's a lot that Shukavak does sort of on the spot, looking at the audience and their needs. We happen to have some little girls in the wedding, and he had them be part of the wedding and seek the blessings of the entire audience. And so these youngsters who had never attended an Indian wedding experienced it, participated in it, and got a slightly better perspective. Some of these young girls are children of biracial parents. So they will then move forward and be far more comfortable with Hindu culture and, some of the rituals. So that was the wonderful thing that occurred. And I think that is what we want to do. And I think Shukavak has said also, because we want these children to incorporate Hinduism and feel comfortable with it. So long as Hinduism is a bunch of Sanskrit mantras performed by someone very different looking and from people here, it's always going to remain isolated and alienated from day-to-day life. And so I think that's a very important message for us to sort of take it and make it our own here.
Those young children that you mentioned, I do remember them, and I do remember that Fremont wedding. They will remember that for the rest of their lives. And True. I didn't know they were going to be there. I didn't plan it. It's just a spontaneous thing. And that's just something I've learned to do over the years. And that's just experience. But the point is, those girls, those little children, they will remember that for the rest of their life. And they'll want to have their own Hindu wedding just like that. And that's how the culture gets transmitted from one generation to the next.
In fact, the oldest of them said that she would create a website for me so that I can start being an officiant. She's about 16 now. She said, "We'll do it for you, Auntie."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. Dr. Das, I know you have to leave at 2 o'clock. We really appreciate that you were able to take time from your schedule to be with us today. And we have so many questions, so many things to ask you. We wish you're able to come back, and we look forward to that time.
Okay. So I have to go and do a wedding, and today it's a mixed wedding. So yesterday it was not a mixed wedding. So this is my typical weekend kind of thing. So this is a Patel Mary Smith wedding. Yesterday was Patel marries Patel. And I don't mean literally like that, but just Indian, not like that.
Sure.
So we're going to go have fun with these people.
Thank you very much.
All right, then.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Namaskar. Okay. Yeah. So good luck. And if you need anything else, give me a call. I'm happy to help out in any way I can.
Thank you very much.
All right, then. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you. So I know Rita ji and Lakshmi ji had some questions. If you want, you can email or we can